Hello everybody from Jerusalem. I'm Alan Abbey with another in our series of Rabbinic holiday webinars. So it's December 14th, 2016, and it's beginning to look in Jerusalem, it's beginning to look a lot like Hanukkah. It's cold and rainy outside. We're fighting off our first colds of the winter, hence the tea today instead of the water we usually drink. And the Ministry of Health has warned us against eating too many sufganiyot. In fact, the joke in Jerusalem now is that the new Hanukkah miracle this year will be that one sufganiyah, one jelly donut, will last 8 days. So, however, we're going to have a slightly more serious conversation in a minute. I'm going to introduce to you now our presenter for the night, Rabbi Dani Segal. Dani Segal is a co-director of the Hartman Beit Midrash for Israeli Rabbis, and he is the rabbi of the community of Alon. Some of you who may have been with us last summer have had some classes with him, but many of you, this is his first time with us, and we want to give him a warm welcome and hope that you will listen and learn something from Dani, which I'm sure you will. Dani is going to introduce himself, say a few more words, and then he'll go right into his presentation. And just a reminder, as always, you can and we encourage you to make comments and ask questions on the chat line on the very page that you're watching. You can also send me an email if you want to have a question, ask a question you want, and you don't have the chat line operating. And now we are expecting and hoping that this is also being broadcast on our Facebook page, and you can put a comment right on that video feed as well. So a lot of options. I don't want to overwhelm you with those. And most importantly is the content of the program tonight with Dani Segal. And so now I turn to you, Rabbi Dani Segal, for tonight's program.
Erev Tov, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be part of this wonderful enterprise. And I was thinking of our title for this evening, In the Window Between Two Worlds. And now I'm speaking here in Yerushalayim, feel very much part of your world also. I was born in California 40-something years ago. Made Aliyah when I was 6 months old. I was a very young Zionist. And my Abba was a conservative rabbi in Palo Alto before we came. I was thinking tonight that Hanukkah is the first Chag we ever celebrated in Israel. We came in 73, and our flight was supposed to be one day after Yom Kippur. And the war broke out, and we were postponed from day to day. And we finally came a week or two after Sukkot. We landed now, and the days are getting darker. And Hanukkah was my first Chag here in Israel. So I feel very close to these two worlds, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I remember when I was learning to become a teacher, there's always a certain gap. I want to talk about this for a second, about the camera, about the distance between when you walk into a room with students or when you're learning with friends. There's always some space between the person talking and the other people in the room. You don't know where they came from. They have no idea where you came from. And I remember the wonderful lady teaching us that she said, try and bridge that gap. If you had a tough morning at home, say something about it. Ask them where they came from. Something will happen in the classroom if you can bring everybody a bit closer. So I can't ask you where you're coming from. I want to say a word about where I'm coming from. It's Jerusalem. It's 7 o'clock. It's dark outside. It's been raining for almost 2 days, which is wonderful, and people are very happy. Hanukkah has been in the air for about 2 months, from the first sufganiyah in the bakeries, which happens a bit after Rosh Hashanah already. So it's a very happy days. It's also a chaotic Middle East. There's a lot of news that's been coming in today from Khaleb over the past few days, from Aleppo. And you can't help thinking with the rain and the weather about what's going on there and about people and children and what's happening in this Middle East around us. And I also want to share personally where I'm coming from. My 5-year-old daughter, Ayala, when I walked out of the room, she said, Abu, where are you going? Like, you just came home an hour or two ago, and she's been sick for the past 3 days because it's been raining. And I told her I need to go out and teach, like happens to rabbis many times when you have to leave your kids at home and go do something else. And that's okay because that always happens, but the problem is that the first source that I have to read today says the exact opposite. The first source on the page, taken from Masechet Shabbat, speaking about Nerot Hanukkah, So Rava says the following, Amar Rava pshitali, ner beito v'ner Hanukkah, ner beito adif. Rava said, it is obvious to me, it's a pshita, that if you have to choose between ner beito and ner Hanukkah, if I only have enough money, either for my Shabbos candles, or to buy candles for Hanukkah, ner beito v'ner Hanukkah, ner beito adif. Why? Mishum shlom bait. So it's tough when you leave home, and the first source that you have to teach says you should have stayed at home. Ner beito, v'ner Hanukkah, ner beito adif mishum shlom bait. And the Gemara will go on to discuss what happens if you only have enough money for Shabbos candles or for wine for Kiddush. So still, ner beito adif, because it lights up the room, so there's shlom bait. And then what happens if I have money for Kiddush on Shabbat or for Hanukkah candles? So the Gemara will say, ner Hanukkah adif mishum pirsumei nisa, because there's somebody out there in the world that needs you to light up the world also. So if it's between the home and the outside, our shlom bait and Hanukkah, their home wins. If it's between being too much at home, doing Kiddush, having a meal, that's when we need to turn to the outside. What's interesting about this Gemara is it's very clear that Shabbat is bait, Shabbat is being at home, and Hanukkah is pirsumei nisa, Hanukkah is the outside. For the past 200 or 300 years, that's not the way Hanukkah has been looked at. Hasidic sources and many others take Hanukkah into the house. Hanukkah is about home. If you read Hasidic literature for the past 200 or 300 years, Hanukkah is bait. Every holiday has something there, and Hanukkah is bait. Hanukkah is being at home. They take the term from the Gemara, Hanukkah ner ishu veito. What is the Hanukkah candle? Ishu veito. It's about our family. It's about our home. I remember a rabbi speaking at some wedding. He told the couple that they're such an amazing couple, they should build this glass case and live in the window for a year, mishum pirsumei nisa. Like Hanukkah is putting our family in the window. Hanukkah is putting family life in the window. Our Jewish home in the window. And stories about what the Yevanim tried to do, what the Greeks were doing. They tried to hurt our home. They tried to hurt our family. Hanukkah is all about being at home. And many sources took Hanukkah as a... Hanukkah means bait. Hanukkah means being at home. I want to try and challenge that. I want to look at why sources took Hanukkah as being bait, being ner ishu veito, while the Gemara, the first one that we learned, thinks that Hanukkah is all about the outside world. It's pirsumei nisa. Pirsumei nisa means advertising the miracle. It's all about the outside world. And I want to look at what happened to Hanukkah, what brought it into the house, and how we can take it back out into the outside world again. So first of all, I want to show how Hanukkah appears as home. Not only Hasidic sources took Hanukkah into the home. It's very interesting. Hanukkah, as we all know, there's no book about Hanukkah. Sefer HaMakkabim is part of the Sfarim HaChitzonim. Don't know how you say Sfarim Chitzonim in English, but Apocrypha? I got the English word. So Hanukkah is there. That's where Sefer HaMakkabim is. And we have nothing in the Mishnah about Hanukkah. And the only 2.5 pages in the Talmud given to Hanukkah appear in Masechet Shabbat. The connection there is lighting candles. We're lighting Shabbos candles, so we light Hanukkah candles. But maybe it's a deeper connection, because Shabbat is about being at home. If you look at Shabbat as opposed to the other holidays, the Shloshet HaRegalim, so Shabbat is bait. The first Mishnah, on the next page, the first Mishnah of Masechet Shabbat is all about somebody being at home. The Baal HaBayit being at home and the poor person being outside, and what should happen between the inside and the outside. But Shabbat is about being at home. On Shloshet HaRegalim, we left our home and we walked to Beit HaMikdash. Holidays are about leaving our home. If on Shabbos we invite the Kadosh Baruch Hu to be in our house, He invites us to His home. And Hanukkah is stuck there in the middle, but when Chachamim chose to put Hanukkah in Masechet Shabbat, they're saying here, Hanukkah is about being at home. Another way of looking at Hanukkah as being at home is Zionism. Zionism grabbed onto Hanukkah. When Zionists were looking for a holiday they wanted to create as a main holiday for the Tzionut, they weren't interested, not in Matan Torah, not in Pesach, not in Sukkot. They were interested in Hanukkah. So the explanation always given is because Hanukkah has to do with Gvura, with Yehuda Maccabi, with fighting the wars. So Zionists had something to look up to. I think it's also because they realized that Hanukkah is about being at home. Of all the miracles that happen in all the holidays, this is the only one that happened here at home. Pesach happened in Egypt, and Shavuot happened in Har Sinai, and Sukkot happened in the desert, but Hanukkah happened here in Jerusalem. And Hanukkah is not about the traveling Jew, it's not about the Lech Lecha, it's about establishing a home. So when Tzionut, when the Zionists were looking for something to hang on to, it wasn't just the story of Elazar fighting the elephant, or of Judah the Maccabee and all the wonderful wars. They were looking for a Chag that had something to do with home. And they chose Hanukkah. Home is a big thing. I think it's a big thing for Israelis. I think it's a big thing for Americans. There's an interesting survey, like an interesting statistic, that Israelis buy homes in higher percentages than in most other places in the Western world, even though economically it's not a very smart choice in Israel. You're much better off renting. But when you've been traveling for 2,000 years, you want a place where you can call home. Americans also buy homes a lot, because when you're a nation of immigrants, you're looking for a place. When you're 5 years old or 6, and my family spent a year in America 3 years ago. So it was also an opportunity for me to attach to my American roots, but also to send my kids to play baseball. And you only get points when you get home. You can run around the bases as long as you want. It's interesting that you need to score a home run. There's something about being at home. So the Zionists were looking for something that means home. So Hanukkah, I think you can make a strong case for Hanukkah being a Chag of the Bayit, of the household. And it's interesting, like we traded Sukkot for Hanukkah. Sukkot and Hanukkah are connected in many ways that we won't go into at the moment, but Sukkot was the holiday. That's the story that Sefer HaMaccabim says. We didn't have a chance to do Sukkot that year, so Hanukkah kind of replaced it. They're both 8 days. But it's interesting how we replace Sukkot. Sukkot is all about the world. It's a universalistic holiday. We have 70 sacrifices for the 70 different nations. And to replace that with Hanukkah, which is all about just us and rejecting. I grew up in a Orthodox youth movement in Israel called Bnei Akiva. Every Hanukkah party was about how we need to reject the outside world. All the Western culture, everything related to what growing up in that youth movement was related to Yavan or to Greece. Or we replaced Sukkot, which was about the whole world, with Hanukkah, which was about the home. So there's a strong case to make for Hanukkah being home. I wanna challenge that, and I wanna read. In order to challenge that, we'll start with a second source on the page. Masechet Sofrim, chapter 20. I'll read it out in Hebrew. נר חנוכה, מצווה להניחו בפתח הסמוך לרשות הרבים, שתהא מזוזה בימין ונר חנוכה בשמאל. It's a mitzvah, says Masechet Sofrim, to place the Hanukkah lamp at the door frame close to the public. The Gemara in source number 1 uses Al petach beito mibachutz. It's like inside and outside. But Masechet Sofrim says something even nicer. We place it at the door frame. Why? שתהא מזוזה בימין ונר חנוכה בשמאל. If we place it so we have like 2 mitzvahs on both sides. On one side we have the mezuzah, and on the other side we're supposed to have the Chanukiah. And Masechet Sofrim will go on to say לקיים מה שנאמר, because we want to fulfill what is written. מה יפית ומה נעמת. They take a verse from Shir HaShirim, from Song of Songs that we'll get to in a second. מה יפית במזוזה ומה נעמת בנר חנוכה. It's like a beautiful picture. We're surrounded by mitzvot. We have the mezuzah on one side and we have the Chanukiah on the other. What's nice about looking at it this way is that actually I think we have 2 mezuzot. We have a mezuzah walking in and we have a different mezuzah walking out. When we're coming from the outside world into the house, we kiss the mezuzah. When we're walking from inside to the outside world, we kiss the Chanukiah. It's an interesting thought to think, what in what is written in the mezuzah is supposed to bring us from the outside world into our home. I want to look at the other one. What in the Chanukiah is supposed to take us from our home, from our house, into the outside world. I think Hanukkah is not about being at home. Hanukkah in many ways is taking things from the inside, from our home, and exporting them into the outside world. And our route, the path that we walk from the house or from the home inside to the outside world walks through the Chanukiah. I want to look at that Chanukiah and I want to try and think what we're trying to take from our home inside and bring into the outside world. And if we get a chance, we'll also try and discuss what we're trying to bring from the outside world through the Chanukiah into our house inside. So I'm going to read one more source and then we're going to try and travel that route. So I'm jumping to Numbers 4 and 5. Number 4 is the verse from Song of Songs. Ma yafit u'ma na'am ta'ava b'ta'anugim. That's the verse that was quoted in Masechet Sofrim to Ma yafit u'ma na'am, both sides, the Chanukiah and the Mezuzah. But in the Midrash, in Shir HaShirim Rabbah, it says the following. What is Ma yafit u'ma na'amt? What are those two sides? So it starts by saying, Ma yafit b'mitzvot, u'ma na'amt b'gmilut chasadim. Probably saying, Ma yafit b'mitzvot, yafit is like things between us and God, and ma na'amt is by doing good deeds to other people, b'gmilut chasadim. And another explanation is, Ma yafit is mitzvot aseh, and ma na'amt is lo taseh. But the third one says, Ma yafit b'mitzvot habayit. It's one thing to do good things within the house. U'ma na'amt b'mitzvot hasadeh. I'll try this in the English. It says, how fair art thou with the commandments of the house. There's one thing about doing things in the house. And how pleasant, that's ma na'amt, with the commandments of the field. There's things that we do in our house and there's things that we do outside. And Hanukkah is supposed to take us from the inside to the outside. So what happens between the inside or the outside? I want to go back to our candle lighting when I was a child. We still go back with my kids every year, at least for one night, to light Hanukkah with my parents. So candle lighting was about the presents, and candle lighting was about playing the games with the dreidel, and it was about sufganiyot, and it was also about the lighting of the Chanukiah. We had one big one that my Abba lights, and all the little ones for the kids. And I love singing the brachot together. And after singing the brachot, my family also has this special tune, which is always kind of awkward when we light with other families. And then we sing Hanerot Halalu. I don't know if this is the same tune sung in America, but Hanerot Halalu she'anu madlikim, Hanerot Halalu she'anu madlikim. And then it goes to Al Nisim ve'al niflaot ve'al gevurot ve'al teshuot. In my house there was only one more line. We sang She'asita la'avoteinu, She'asita la'avoteinu, Vayamim ha'em b'zman hazeh. That's where we finished. When I got to yeshiva many years later, I realized that little chapter has a few more lines that you're supposed to sing. You continue saying, Kol shmunat yemei Chanukah nerot halalu kodeshem, that for the 8 days of Hanukkah, these nerot are kodesh, they're holy. And then we say, ve'en lanu reshut leishtamesh b'hem, ela lirotam bilvad. You're not allowed to use the lights of the Chanukiah, but only to look at them. I want to look at this halakha for a second, and I think it has a lot to explain about Hanukkah, and it has a lot to explain about what happens inside the house and what we want to bring out into the world. The idea of lighting a candle and not being able to use it is kind of a strange idea. We wait till it's dark, and we're not allowed to light the Chanukiah till it's dark. And then when it's dark, you light a candle, but then you can't use it. And you're very careful to light a shamash just in case you use the Chanukiah, so you'll use the shamash and not the Chanukiah. It's also strange because if you look at any other mitzvah of candle lighting, we light candles because we want there to be light in the room. Shabbos candles were originally to light up the room. That's why they're called Shlom Bayit. We lit candles where we ate. So as opposed to other evenings where we ate in the dark or we ate early, so it brought light. And the Havdalah candle, why do we do this with the Havdalah candle? because the halakha says, it's here on the page somewhere, that you're not allowed to bless over the Havdalah candle until you used it. Because there's nothing to bless over a candle if you're not going to use it. So before we say Borei Morei Hayesh, or while we look at our fingernails or look at different things, because we want to use the Havdalah candle. But with Hanukkah we do something else. We light the candle and we're not allowed to use them. We're supposed to just look at the Hanukkah candle. I want to try and understand that idea, and in order to understand that idea, we're going to start from the very beginning. A very good place to start. We're going to look at the first verses in Bereshit, try and look at what light is and what darkness is, and then come back to the Hanukkah candles and come back to what we want to bring out into the world. So I'm reading the first verses of Bereshit. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו וחושך על פני תהום ורוח אלוהים מרחפת על פני המים. Those first verses of the Torah were interpreted or applied in the Midrash by Reish Lakish to Jewish history. When they read the first verses of Bereshit, if these are the first verses of the creation of the world, they must be telling us something. So Reish Lakish reads these first two verses as a condensed Jewish history. So I'll read the Hebrew first. I'm in source number 9. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish patar karyei b'malchuyot. And he says, Ve'aretz hayta tohu zo bavel, ve'bohu zo madai, ve'choshech zo yavan she'ichshicha עיני ישראל בגזרותיה. וחושך על פני תהום זו מלכות הרשעה הזאת. So Reish Lakish takes every word in that verse and applies it to a different superpower that at some point had something very not nice to do to the people of Israel. So he says, והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, so tohu is Babylonia. And bohu is Madai, that's the whole story of Esther. Greece, and the Yavanim and Antiochus, they gained the word of Choshech. Darkness is applied to Yavan, to the story of Hanukkah. Why of all things is Hanukkah, or did the Greeks gain or earn the word Choshech? So, or the idea of Choshech. There were nations that did much more terrible things to us than the Greeks. I mean, they didn't destroy the temple, and they didn't kill so many other people here in Israel. Rome did much worse, and Rome is here choshech al pnei tehom. If you look at the word choshech in Hebrew can also mean chasach, when you're missing something. Like choshech can mean that there's no light. There's a deeper kind of choshech. Choshech can also mean there was never light at all. Not only is there not light here at the moment, choshech is not like lo chasachta et bincha et yachidcha, like holding something back, holding the light back. But there's a choshech like choshech Mitzrayim, a choshech that you can feel. Like when it's dark outside, here it's dark outside, you could say, okay, there's no light, but sometimes it's so dark, or sometimes you're in such a dark place in your life that you even forget that there was ever light. There's a deep kind of choshech. I think Yavan gained a deep kind of choshech. Yavan, there was a very interesting thing, or difficult thing that happened to us with Yavan. Why does the Midrash say that Yavan are choshech? He says because they said, "Hichshicha עיני ישראל בגזרותיה, שהייתה אומרת לישראל, כתבו בקרן שור שאין לכם חלק באלוהי ישראל." I'll read the English. They darkened the eyes of Israel with its decrees, ordering Israel right on the horn of an ox, that ye have no portion in the God of Israel. That's interesting. What did Greece do to us? They made us forget that we had any part of Elohei Israel. There's something about Greece. They didn't destroy the temple, and they didn't destroy the city of Jerusalem. They just gave it a Greek name. Or they put something of theirs within the temple. They didn't say we couldn't learn Torah. They just translated Torah into the Greek language. It's as if saying not only can you not do something, but it's not really even yours. It belongs to the whole world. That's a very difficult kind of darkness. I'll put that aside for a second. I want to look at light for a second. And there's also two kinds of light. This room is lit up. I can realize that light in two fashions. I can look at the light and say, here, there's light in the room. I can also look at Alan and say, hey, if I see Alan, then the room must be lit up. So you can look at the light or you can use the light. Those two ways of seeing something or using something are also two ways of kind of conducting your life. You can see something or you can use something. I'll try and explain this in a... There's a very nice perush of the Rashar Hirsch, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, which relates to, do we look at the world as seeing things the way they are or how we can use them? He has a very interesting interpretation of what the original sin, the first sin was in Gan Eden. The verse says, Vatere Aisha ki tov ha'etz lema'achal. When Eve looked at the tree, it says, Vatere Aisha ki tov ha'etz lema'achal. He realizes something very interesting. He says when she looked at the tree, she didn't see the tree. She saw what she can get from the tree. Vatere Aisha ki tov ha'etz lema'achal. He puts that verse as opposed to another verse. When Moshe is born, so Moshe's mother looks at him, and it says, Vatere ha'isha et ha'yeled ki tov hu. Not Vatere ha'isha. Both verses start Vatere ha'isha. But not Vatere ha'isha ki tov ha'etz lema'achal. Not what can I use this tree for? Hey, I can eat its fruit. When she looks at Moshe, she doesn't say, hey, I can eat him. No. She says, Vatere ha'isha et ha'yeled. She sees him. Vatere et ha'yeled ki tov hu. She doesn't look at the child and say, hey, he's going to be this, he's going to be... She sees the child. So Rashar Hirsch says that the first sin that we ever had was not seeing things for what they are, but seeing how we can use them. What's very interesting is that's what happens to the first light. Vayomer Elohim yehi or vayhi or. There was a big darkness in the world, and he created light. But that light was hidden somewhere, because we created light again on the fourth day of creation. There's a very nice midrash says, why was the light of the first day put aside? So in the 10th source, Rashi says the following. Af beze anu tzrichim ledivre agada. This is Rashi on the verse, Vayar Elohim et haor ki tov. Vayar Elohim et haor. Again, the God looked at the light itself. He didn't use the light for something else. Vayar Elohim et haor ki tov. אף בזה אנו צריכים לדברי אגדה, ראו שאינו כדאי להשתמש בו רשעים. God saw that רשעים were using the light. He didn't want that to happen. והבדילו לצדיקים, so he put it aside. That's the term that we know as אור הגנוז, the hidden light. The light of the first day was hidden. It was a very special light, but that's hidden. Why? Because people were using it. So now we have אור הגנוז, that Hashem didn't want to be there because people were using it. They weren't looking at the thing itself, they were using it. In a certain way, I think what happens every Hanukkah is we have a very big darkness. The days get shorter and it's dark outside. And the Midrash calls Greek choshech. Why? Because sometimes there's a very deep darkness. Not only things are missing, you kind of forget they were even there at all. There's a beautiful poem. There's a Hebrew poet called Rachel. One of her famous songs, which also has a tune written to it, is Ve'ulai lo hayu advarim me'olam. Some of you might know it. It starts out, Ve'ulai lo hayu advarim me'olam. Maybe things never happened. Rachel grew up in Kinneret, in this little colony on the Kinneret, and when she got sick with shachefut, with tuberculosis, she was sent away. She was sent away to Rehovot. They didn't want her, she was contagious. And she writes this poem in Rehovot. She says, maybe if I was sent away, maybe it never happened. So sometimes there's such a darkness where you're not only missing something, you feel it wasn't there. When it's so dark, we take light. We take light from the first day. We take that hidden light. We take that very special light that can fight any kind of darkness. But if we're taking that light, says the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's a light that I put aside because people were using it. If we're using Or HaGanuz, you can't use it. That's what we say with the Hanukkah candles. אין לנו רשות להשתמש בהם, אלא לראותם בלבד. What we're supposed to practice, I try to do this every Hanukkah. The Hanukkah is supposed to be there for half an hour. So I try and sit and look for half an hour. And we're supposed to practice looking at something and not thinking how you can use it, but just enjoying it for itself. Or just trying to let it be the way it is. That's something that you have at home. When you look at, if I go back to the verse, הנרות הללו קודש הם ואין לנו רשות להשתמש בהם. The word Kodesh, Professor Moshe Halbertal has a beautiful take on Kodesh. He says that holiness, that's the definition of Kodesh. Holiness is not using something. Anything that you want to use, you take away from its holiness. Shabbat is holy because we don't use Shabbat to do anything else. We just enjoy Shabbat for itself. Kiddushin, when a couple gets married, it's two people looking at each other and saying, nothing here is going to be using the other person. We're here to let the other person be. That's Kiddushin. And looking at Hanukkah candles and saying, הנרות הללו קודש הם, is saying, here, I'm going to let you be. This is something we know how to do beautifully at home. This is something that we want to export into the outside world. One of the nice things that happens at home, and we want to bring outside, we want to pass through the Chanukiah, we want that to be our mezuzah into the outside world, is the idea of אין לנו רשות להשתמש בהם אלא לראותם בלבד. Can we take that look that we practice at home and bring it into the outside world? That's one halacha, and I think that's one way of looking at the Chanukiah and taking something into the outside world. See, we don't have too much time, so I'll share one more small thing. There's another little halachic passage about Hanukkah that I also enjoy. I think it's also here in one of the sources. In source number 7, when they speak about not using the candles, so it says, Amar Rav Yuda Amar Rav Asi, Asur lehartzot ma'ot keneged ner Chanukah. I'll read the English in number 7. Rav Yuda said, in Rav Asi's names, one must not count money by the Hanukkah light. Okay, in case that's what you were planning to do, this Hanukkah. So Rav Yuda says, when the Chanukiah is lighting, that's not a good time to sit there and count your money. In the additional sources, I put in two chapters from The Little Prince, a book that I loved growing up, Anasicha Katan. And I heard a beautiful idea once from Rav Yaakov Nagin, a very dear friend, a rabbi in a community called Otniel. And so he brought these 2 chapters from The Little Prince. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the book, or how many of you, like me as a child, read it again and again. There's 2 beautiful chapters. One is about the Ashir. I remember it in Hebrew, so I'm going to go to the supplementary English source. So chapters 13 and 14, or 14 and 15. Yeah, 13 and 14. So he comes to the businessman, and the businessman is sitting there counting. And he tries to ask him a question, and he's, don't bother me, and you're interrupting all the time. And at a certain point he says, what are you doing? And he's counting the stars. And he gets to a few million in a certain point. And he keeps asking him, 501 million what? Repeated the little prince. And at a certain point the businessman takes his face out of counting the stars, and he explains why he's counting them, because that way he owns them. And he wants to be rich, to own a lot of stars. And then when the little prince asks him, why are you counting? Why do you need to own all the stars? Why do you need to be rich with stars? He says, so I can buy more stars. And it's such a sad and beautiful parody about forgetting what's supposed to be a means for something else, and thinking that that's the thing in itself, acquiring more and more. And in such a beautiful way, the next chapter in The Little Prince is the lamplighter. The very, very dedicated lamplighter. That's chapter 14. And he reaches the lamplighter, who's supposed to light the lamp at night and put it out when the day comes. And he talks to him, but every minute he stops and he needs to put it out again and to turn it on again. And he has this terrible problem because the star that he lives on is turning quicker and quicker. And once he used to have time between morning and evening. But I think about these two people, one who's so dedicated in lighting the world, in bringing light into the world, and the other who's sitting there counting his money. And it's such a beautiful halacha about saying, if you're counting your money near the Hanukkah candles, you don't understand what it's about. If you're sitting there thinking about what you have and not about bringing light into the world, then you don't understand what Hanukkah is about. I love Chassidut. That was my problem with this shiur. I love the ideas that Chassidut brings into the world, and I love the fact that they take different things. Purim is about something, and Yom Kippur is about something, and it's so beautiful that Hanukkah is about the home, and I think they did beautiful things with that idea. But I can't live with the idea of Hanukkah being all about what's happening inside. That's not what Hanukkah is about. Hanukkah is taking everything that happens in the house and lighting up the outside. The halachot of Hanukkah are so beautiful. If there's nobody walking in the street, there's no point in lighting your Chanukiah in the window. And if people aren't walking there anymore, if it's too late, then you can't light the Chanukiah with a bracha. The bracha is not about what you're doing inside your house. It's about bringing light into the outside. It's about taking the feelings and the caring that you've practiced at home and bringing it into the outside world. If people are sitting in their homes and lighting Chanukiyot and happy with the Chag, and not thinking about people outside, not thinking of people who don't have a Chanukiyah, or somebody's outside in the rain, or not thinking of Aleppo, not thinking about things that are happening not in our little country, there's such a strong feeling of how wonderful it is to be safe in the middle of this chaos. But you can't be inside your home and not think about what's happening outside. Chazal put the Chanukiah between two worlds, between the inside and the outside. They want it there, they want it to be your mezuzah into the world. And if you're counting what you have and not lighting up what's outside, then you're missing the point of Hanukkah. Maybe I'll say just one last short idea. I don't know, if you're holding the book, The Little Prince, you should look at the dedication to the book. It has a beautiful dedication. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who wrote the book, dedicated the book to his friend. And it has a beautiful dedication. It starts out with the words I remember in Hebrew. He says, Le Leon Vert. Leon Vert is a friend of his. And then in the dedication to the book, he apologizes. He says, I want to apologize to all the children reading this book, because it's a book for children, that I dedicated this book to an adult. And then he says, but I have 3 good reasons. 1, this adult is a good friend of mine. The second reason, he writes this during the Second World War, this adult is sitting somewhere in the dark. He's in France, and he really needs something to cheer him up. And besides, this is an adult who really loves children. But even after he gives all these explanations, he says, but that's not enough. I can't dedicate this book to an adult. So he says, I want to dedicate the book to Leon Vert when he was a child. That's how he dedicates the book in the end. Leon Vert k'shaya yeled. And I'm saying this because Hanukkah, I see this through my children today. It's such a chag of children. It's a chag of sufganiyot, and of the dreidel, and of the games we play, and the presents that we get, and enjoying so many things. And I think that a lot of the things, it's not just the chag for children, it's remembering how we were when we were children, because a lot of these things that we talked about today are things that come to children naturally. They don't see people as what they can gain from them. They look at people. And they don't think of the world as acquiring things. They're there to light up the world. They do it with their smiles. They do it all day long. So that's our Chanukiah, somewhere between the outside world and what we have inside. And there's a lot of wonderful things inside the Beit, but Hanukkah is about our ability to bring all of those good things out into the outside world. So I want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah, a lot of good tzufganiyot, and enjoy your candle lighting at home, and light up your home, and light up the world, and take things into the outside too. Toda Rabbi and Hanukkah Sameach.
Thanks, Dani, for bringing light into this very dark and wet night here in Jerusalem. And I want to encourage anybody who's watching now to post some questions, again, either on the chat line, send me an email, or even on our Facebook page. And if we get some, I will read them certainly. But until we get a question, let me just turn to you and ask this question. So you brought Hanukkah back to the home, and how we can both light up our own homes, but also the goal or the intent is to light up the outside. More and more, though, most of the time these days when we hear about Hanukkah, whether it's in Israel or in the diaspora, it seems to have a much different connotation. Everybody has taken Hanukkah, it's very plastic Hanukkah. It's been taken as a holiday of political freedom. Tonight, in fact, in Washington is President Obama's final Hanukkah party. Some folks that you and I both know will be there. And the talk will be about politics. You weren't invited? No, neither was I. But the talk will be about not politics, but about freedom and liberty and democracy even. And that seems, while that's all worthwhile things, you're taking Hanukkah in a much more personal way. How have we kind of used Hanukkah or misused Hanukkah to make it more external and not taking it back into our homes?
So it's an interesting challenge. The talk about Hanukkah between the personal and the political. First of all, you're right. Hanukkah was taken by so many people to say whatever they wanted. When Zionists took Hanukkah, you think like of the miracle of the Pach HaShemen. It's such a religious holiday. Like we found the oil in Bet HaMikdash, and we can light the menorah, and the Zionist song about Hanukkah is Nes lo kara lanu, Pach Shemen lo matzanu. Like there's no miracles, and God didn't help us, and we did it all by ourselves. So people have done with Hanukkah whatever they wanted, and I can also understand the idea of the political freedom, because that's part of the Hanukkah story. Because part of the halachot of Hanukkah are that at times where you can't light it at the window, you can hide, and you can light it in the living room. And I know from my family, my grandparents, when they came to America, they didn't always light the Chanukiah in the window. So the ability to have President Obama invite you and light the Chanukiah or a Chanukiah in Central Park, there's definitely a part of political freedom. But I'll just say one more thing about the personal or the home and the outside. You mentioned the program that I have the privilege of being part of here at Hartman, the Israeli rabbis from all different denominations, also learning together and creating a program, a smicha program, of what it means to be an Israeli rabbi. One of the main things in being that Israeli rabbi is leaving your personal home and seeing the Israeli society as your new home. When people would ask me what it means to be a community rabbi, and this probably relates to a lot of the people watching this. So much time on my rabbinate is my congregants and the people, what's happening in this house. And it's and my specific congregation that I cater to. And part of like what Israeli Rabbanut is trying to do, or this program is trying to do, is to take responsibility for the outside, for the public sphere. Calling on rabbis to see part of their role, which I think rabbis saw once, as the political sphere as part of your role. And so Hanukkah is a great example of bringing light not only to your small circles, but realizing that what you have to take care of is things that are happening outside, and that's part of our responsibility also as rabbis. So.
Well, we have a comment that touches on what you've just said. This is from Adam Rubin in Seattle, Washington, where it is certainly not dark. It's about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning there. And he says, It is interesting that the Ramah establishes that one can light inside the home rather than outside in case of danger from neighbors. Perhaps is it possible that Hanukkah became a Zionist holiday because of the absence of fear in Israel? We can light outside without anxiety or shame.
So, Shalom Adam. I'll just say two things about your question. When you said the Ramah says, so my parents met at Camp Ramah. So I was saying, Ramah, how's the, my first summer of my life was in Camp Ramah in the Poconos, but I think that's a different Ramah.
Yes, I think so.
And it's true that the Ramah states that. I think Zionists, again, they clung on to Hanukkah for many reasons. And I think definitely that's part of it, the ability to be free, to say what you want to say out in the public. And also you want something to look up to. And in different times, I also think like when we were talking about when Chassidut for the past 200 years was talking about Hanukkah as being the Jewish household, that's what we had. And when Zionism wanted to say, okay, forget the home, forget community, let's talk about nation. So this was a good holiday for them. So it's also the sense of no fear and being able to say what you have to say. But it's definitely also the story of the Gvura. And I also think it has, for them, it had something to do with finally being at home. With not having the Lech Lecha, but having a place where they can call home.
So can we in fact bring it back into the home and still have light outside? What are the things that we can do in the home, or that families can do in the home, to both bring the light out from within themselves and also let that light shine outside?
There's a beautiful project in Israel called Ner Mechaber. We've been taking part of for the past few years. Ner Mechaber, it's the word play, Mechaber is bringing people together. And the whole idea was lighting candles together. And like the community where I live, we did 2 Ner Mechabers. One is amongst people in the community. We have this kit put together for families with a few sufganiyot and 3 games that you can play and a little quiz with questions, and we pair them up and we have this whole thing. So nobody, or at least for one evening, you're doing candle lighting and you're lighting at home, but you're bringing. And we also have another community that we're paired with, a community called Ilan, of people who are physically challenged with different challenges. And every one of the families in our community does a Ner Mechaber with a family from that community. So I think if we look at this idea of Hanukkah as doing something at home, but thinking of the outside, there's many different things we can do. Ner Mechaber is one of them, but I think every community can try and think of how they can use Hanukkah or facilitate it in that way.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions at the moment. I will still encourage you to send some questions, and if they come in after the program is over, we will get them to Rabbi Dani Segal, and we will hope he will answer them, and we will get them back to you. I would like to thank you all for being with us today. I will remind you that this program will be posted on our website and on our YouTube channel as soon as we can get it, so that you can refer to it and tell people about it, we hope, in the days leading up to Hanukkah in about a week and a half or so. And that all of you continue to spread the light of Hanukkah both within your homes and outside. I want to wish you a Hanukkah Sameach, and thank you for being with us here in Jerusalem today.